In the shadows where truth and tales intertwine, we find the thrilling, the chilling, the downright spine-tingling. From the paranormal to the peculiar, every echo has a story. Dare to delve into the unexpected, the unexplained? Brace yourself, for you're about to embark on a journey where fear meets fascination. Stay tuned if you dare, for stories that will make your heart race and your mind ponder. Welcome to the realm of the eerie, the realm of the unknown. And remember, like and subscribe, if you dare. Have you ever questioned the reality you live in? Imagine having it shattered in a day. That's precisely what happened when I was promoted to special agent in the FBI at the age of 26. I was the youngest to climb the ladder in my station, but little did I know this was not a typical promotion. There I was, an eager agent, fresh-faced and ready to make a difference. Then, my senior colleague Joe, a seasoned veteran with years of service under his belt, introduced me to a new world. A world that was hidden behind the steel gates of a heavily guarded army base. A world whose key was held by a man named Captain Turner. Captain Turner was an imposing figure, a seasoned army captain with an aura of authority that could make even the bravest hearts quiver. His reputation preceded him. He was known for his stern demeanor, his unflinching resolve, and his mysterious duties that no one seemed to fully understand. Joe and I arrived at the base, where Captain Turner greeted us outside a small, impenetrable-looking building. The security was unlike anything I had seen before. It wasn't just a badge that granted you access, but face recognition technology too. Once inside, we were led to a room with a single desk and a lift at the back, the air heavy with an unspoken secret. Joe introduced me to Captain Turner, explaining that I would be replacing Alex. He mentioned I needed to be read in, whatever that meant. With a nod of agreement, Captain Turner began to speak, his words like ice-cold water pouring over me. He told me to forget everything I thought I knew, to prepare for a revelation that, if mishandled, could lead to severe consequences. Suddenly, my promotion didn't seem as exciting as it had a few moments ago. Little did I know, this promotion was a ticket to a world beyond my wildest nightmares. A cold shiver ran down my spine as Captain Turner uttered, "Young man, forget everything you think you know." His words echoed in the room, bouncing off the cold, sterile walls. The heavy silence that followed was broken by the captain's grim declaration. "What I'm about to tell you is punishable by death. If you breathe a word to anyone, we will erase you and your family from existence." His words were as stone cold as his gaze, and I could feel the weight of their meaning sink deep into my bones. Captain Turner shifted his gaze towards an insignia, a badge that held a peculiar design. It was handed over to me with an air of reverence. "You're now clearance level Z12, he said, his voice echoing the gravity of the situation. The badge felt heavy in my hand, like a small child clutching a candy far too large for him to comprehend. The captain then proceeded to introduce me to what he referred to as Project Woodland. He spoke of monitoring unknowns in our national forests, reacting to hostiles, and documenting findings. The words unknowns and hostiles hung in the air, their meanings vague and ominous. It felt as if I had been handed a puzzle with missing pieces. I was to act as a go-between, investigating reports from national parks and determining their level of hostility before taking action. But what action, and against what? The captain's answers were as cryptic as the questions themselves. As the briefing came to a close, my mind was a whirlpool of confusion and intimidation. The gravity of my new role felt immense, and the unknowns that lay ahead seemed like monsters lurking in the shadows. I was left with more questions than answers, the biggest one being, what exactly were these unknowns? My mind raced, but I couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what lay ahead. I was stepping into a realm of uncertainty, a world where the line between reality and fiction was blurred. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown. The words hostile entities echoed in my mind. Was this some kind of sick joke? I thought. My mind was a whirlpool of confusion, disbelief, and trepidation. The room, once filled with the hum of casual conversation, was now silent, the tension palpable. The term hostile entities was not one you came across in the usual FBI lexicon, and certainly not in the context of national parks. This was a realm of bears and mountain lions, of lost hikers and campfire stories. Not of, what, monsters? The word seemed ludicrous, even in the privacy of my own thoughts. Yet Captain Turner's stern expression gave me pause. This was no jest. This was as real as the badge he'd handed me, as real as the impenetrable building we sat in, as real as the fear that was slowly creeping up my spine. As if sensing my turmoil, Captain Turner spoke, his voice a low rumble in the silence. "This meeting never happened," he said, his gaze piercing. "You breathe a word to anyone, we will erase you and your family from existence." The threat hung in the air, heavy and menacing. For the first time in my life, I felt the real weight of my oath to serve and protect. This was not what I'd signed up for, but it was now my reality. Joe, the man who I'd looked up to, who had mentored me, now seemed like a stranger. His calm acceptance of this bizarre situation was unnerving. But what choice did I have but to trust him? He was my only lifeline in this surreal scenario. As we left the base, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. What had I gotten myself into? The world as I knew it was crumbling, and in its place, a harsh new reality was emerging. One filled with unknowns, hostiles, and entities that lurked in the shadows of our national parks. This was my life now. And as the enormity of it all sank in, I couldn't help but wonder, would I ever be ready for what lay ahead? The car ride back was filled with an ominous silence. I had to know more. It was me, Dennis, in the passenger seat, my gaze lost in the passing scenery, but my mind was elsewhere. "Joe," I found my voice. "What was that meeting about? What's going on?" My words hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty and dread. Joe didn't respond immediately. He pulled the car over to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and looked at me. His eyes, usually filled with warmth, were now cold, almost distant. "All the monsters and beasts of legend, that's what we deal with," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I felt as if the air had been sucked out of the car. Monsters, beasts of legend. Was this some sort of joke? I laughed, a nervous, disbelieving laugh. "You're kidding, right?" Joe just shook his head. The look in his eyes was enough to convince me he wasn't kidding. "You're the handler for all national parks where cases of the unknowns come up," he continued. The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my understanding of the world. I was to be a handler of monsters, of creatures that were supposed to exist only in fairy tales and horror movies? The drive back continued in silence. I sat there, my mind spinning, my grasp on reality shattering. I thought about all the beasts of legends, such as fairies, elves, Bigfoot. And then there were the more worrisome ones, werewolves, wendigos, Mothman. And what about all the ones I didn't know about? Joe's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "Don't worry, try not to overthink it. You'll get the hang of it, and I'll be here to guide you." His words were meant to be comforting, but they did little to ease my fear, my disbelief. My mind spiraled out of control as the reality I knew was replaced by a world filled with nightmares. This was the beginning of a journey I never asked for, yet had no choice but to undertake. The car ride back from the army base was the longest drive of my life. As the landscapes blurred past the window, my mind was a whirlwind of confusion and dread. I was no longer just Special Agent Dennis. I'd become a handler for the unknowns, the beasts of legend that supposedly lurked within our national parks. As I sat there, my mind spiraling out of control, I couldn't help but recall the tales I had heard as a child. The elusive Bigfoot, the mischievous fairies, the haunting wendigos. But they were just stories, right? Just figments of our imagination, born from the human instinct to fear the unknown. But now, they were my reality. My mind was abuzz with questions. How was I to investigate these unknowns? What would I do if I encountered one? And most importantly, how was I to keep this secret from the world? The weight of my new responsibility was overwhelming. Seeing my distress, Joe, with his years of experience, tried to reassure me. "Don't worry, Dennis," he said, his voice steady and comforting. "It's a lot to take in, I know, but you're not alone in this. I'll be here to guide you every step of the way." His words brought me a small measure of comfort. But the reality of my new role still loomed large. I was no longer dealing with the ordinary. My job now was to protect the world from the extraordinary, from threats that most people couldn't even begin to comprehend. As we neared the city, the last rays of the setting sun cast long shadows over the landscape. In those shadows, my imagination began to conjure images of the unknowns I might face. I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. As we drove back in silence, I couldn't help but wonder, what horrors lay ahead in the shadows of our national parks? And so, our tale of the Campfire Horrors comes to an end. Until next time, sleep tight. Before we part ways, dear viewers, Remember to stay vigilant. The campfire horrors may have been extinguished for now, but the embers of the unknown always remain. As you lay down to sleep tonight, don't forget the lessons from our tale. Safety is but a fleeting moment in a world of unseen. So, if you've enjoyed this journey into the abyss, don't forget to ring that bell and smash that like button. Do it before the thing under your bed decides to pay you a visit. Oh, and keep those night lights on. You never know what might be lurking in the dark. Thank you for embarking on this terrifying adventure with us, until our paths cross again in another tale of the unknown. Goodbye and sweet dreams, if you can.